I was working myself into the ground. I'd lost a lot of weight. I was becoming a little bit depressed. Got to the stage where I wouldn't want to get out of bed. I'd phone into work on an excuse. You'd be frightened to go to sleep at night because of how you think you might feel when you wake up in the morning. You particularly feel for anybody you see on TV whose children have died, and you say, well, they look how I feel inside. That's exactly how it feels. It's like a living bereavement. I've been trying for 5.5 to 6 years to see my children properly. There's been a total of 29 contact orders. It certainly cost me somewhere between £15,000 to £20,000.
In the UK, nearly half of marriages end in divorce. Whilst no statistics are available on how many marriages involve children, it appears that in the cases involving children, where parents cannot agree over access, that less than 15% of fathers are granted anything more than 2 days access every 2 weeks, and some extra occasional contact in school holidays. One reason often cited for this is the way child support is calculated. Based on the number of nights that the child stays with the non-resident parent, usually the father, the assessment is that the non-resident parent should pay 13% of their income to the mother if the child spends less than 103 nights with the father. If the parents have shared custody, exceeding 175 nights, that figure drops to 6.5%. Based on an average salary of £24,000 per annum, that is worth around £1,500 per year to the mother. Whilst fathers in a modern world are expected to be involved in every aspect of raising the child, they are soon considered surplus to requirements in the eyes of the courts when it comes to regular contact.
What do we want? Justice! Where do we want it? Now!
Organisations like Fathers for Justice have raised awareness of these issues, and there is now a consultation process taking place over the situation relating to fathers' access rights. These findings are due to be released in late 2011. However, for many, the process is too little, too late. One such father is Mark Wilkinson, who has battled to see his daughters for many years.
I first moved to Norfolk at the beginning of 1989, served in the Air Force for 12 years in all. And my last posting was to actually RAF Coltishall, which is about five miles out of the city. And I was there for 4.5 years. Laura was born the summer of 1994, and Emma was born in the beginning of 1998. I was present at the birth of Laura, and when I saw her, I was really moved by it. And it did make me feel closer as a couple. I did their baths, I put them to bed. There were occasional evenings where I couldn't do that. Because of the travelling time from North Norfolk, I used to have to get up at 6:30 in the morning to leave the house by 7:30. To get to the park and ride on the outskirts of Norwich by 8:10 so that I could be at my desk by about 5 to 9. I'd leave at 5:30 and get home sometime about 6:45, so I'd do the baths and bed and the children would be there waiting up. As far as Emma was concerned, it was the same after she was born too. In the night, when they'd wake up occasionally, as all children do, or for example when they had coughs, it would be me who would always waken first, or at least nine times out of 10, and I go and feed them cough mixture. I participated in their nice feeds right from the start, because after the first week or two they were bottle fed. So I was always extremely hands-on. Cheryl and I met through a mutual friend round about the summer of 1989, and we went out. She actually worked in the pub then, which is where we met. We went out for about a year or so, moved in probably slightly to the consternation of her local parents, and we got married the following June. So some people thought it was a whirlwind romance. It was probably slightly less than 1 year. Looking back, it didn't feel like that. It felt the right thing to do at the time. I was really happy with my family life. I was happy to be a father. Obviously after the birth it comes as a bit of a shock to the system, but it's nothing that I don't think you're expecting when it happens. Having a child obviously alters the relationship slightly, but I was really thrilled and it felt good. There was increasing friction after the birth of Emma, particularly after about a year or so. And we had a trial separation, which I have to say wasn't what I actually wanted. I was persuaded to return from the trial separation at the end of 1998 because I wanted to share Christmas with my kids. There seemed to be a lot of arguments about nothing in particular. It seemed to cause a lot more stress. And it was almost as though I'd become superfluous to the proceedings. I hadn't been prepared for the ferocity of some of the verbal and sometimes quite personal attacks. 1 or 2 of them after the birth were physical too. We called it a day completely round about May 1999, and I then moved back to Norwich. I remember feeling quite bad for a month or 2, but the afternoon after I made a telephone call to find some alternative accommodation. It was the beginning of May 1999, and I actually moved into it was a house I rented for 6 months and subsequently bought to provide some continuity for the children. After I came out of work that afternoon, it was almost as though a curtain had sort of lifted, a black sea of despair and despondency had gone. You could notice that the sun shone and everything. You could almost hear everything, including birds in the trees, that I don't remember having heard for months. And they didn't all come back that afternoon. It was simply because I'd made that call. I could see some future and I could see some escape from my ex-wife. However, the deep sadness and the sorrow of it all was that I wouldn't be able to live in the same house as my children, something which I've regretted every day since. It used to get to the Wednesday or the Thursday of the weekend after contact. So it had been like a week and a half, because I would have them alternative weekends. We'd see each other from the Saturday morning until just after lunchtime on the Sunday, although I'd asked for it to be the evening. There'd be a gap of a week and a half. I'd be due to see them by picking them up the next Saturday morning. And by the time it got around to the Wednesday evening or the Thursday evening, I'd be really, really missing them. Became almost like a pain, a sort of longing for us to see each other. And it would be then that one's mind would start to play tricks. You'd be thinking, well, you wouldn't have this if you'd have continued in the same house, and that's what you should have done. And I remember for the first 6 to 12 months or so after the final separation, that sort of thinking began to click in after about a week and a half of not having seen the girls. Those feelings were immediately dispelled when I went to pick them up and saw my ex-wife face to face, and some of her behaviour in front of those children, and how she used to pressurise them and put all sorts of emotional pressure on them. Almost, it's a fair description to say emotional blackmail. I knew we had to have a court case, and I was granted a week extra in the summer and 3 days extra at Easter and at Christmas. That was the first contested hearing. The second one was after she withheld contact, May 2001, after my partner and I bought a house together. It took 6 months to get that to the hearing stage because of Clarke's reports and all the court wait. Then there was a hearing because she made that not work. She would actually sabotage any subsequent contact, and it got reduced to contact centres. The first one was dreadful because there wasn't adequate supervision. So like when anybody's back was turned, she would upset the children or take them off to the loo once we began to actually get on. So then it became a supervised place at Family's House, but she was present in the building, and so they'd sort of run between me and her, and she'd be even put poison in them at that point. So because that failed to work, and she went out and got a psychiatrist report, which was one-sided without interviewing me, I had to go to court to fight to even get an independent psychologist report on my children. Unfortunately, it was due to the recent introduction then of the Human Rights Act that the children have a right to know the father, and so therefore the court must leave no stone unturned. Those were the actual words of the judge. So then we had a psychologist report and a Clarke report. She refused to accept both. It goes to a contested hearing, who hear it all over again, all the same old thing and all the same old accusations. The worst thing is Clarke, the Children and Family Court Advisory and Support Service. They're termed the eyes and ears of the court. Well, they were born deaf and dumb because it's just absolutely crazy. My Clarke's reporter, and that's all they are, a simple reporter, she came out with so many comments, and often made in person, not on the phone or in writing at all. Oh well, there comes a time when you have to consider withdrawing from the situation. She told me that just before they turned up for a supervised contact, feeding the ducks and having a Big Mac, December 2001, so that I could be observed to see how I was with them. She told me that just before they turned up. And everything takes a week here, an extra month, an extra 2 months, an extra 3 months. So by the time you get to see your kids, you've had a massive gap, and they're reporting that things are strange. I tried discussing things in person, and all of this had fallen through. Mediation had been sabotaged. So it went to court, where we had a meeting in front of the then court welfare officer at the beginning of December. Negotiations at that point were still rather difficult, but we managed to agree from 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning to 1:30 on a Sunday on alternate weekends. Cheryl phoned me a fortnight later, just before the next one was due to start, and cancel things. She expressed what she said were concerns, and that I would be hearing from her legal team more.
Coming up in part 2.
After a year or so, I met Martin, and we fell for each other. My barrister told me, soon the day will come when you don't have to think about those children every day of your life. I've not seen either child properly, Laura or Emma, since literally a few minutes on February the 14th, 2003.